Alright, so, it's been a while since I made one of these, eh? Anyway, hello all you crazy people out there, this is Dragonite Spam, and welcome back to another Game Maker tutorial video. So, yeah, once again, I say this every time, but sorry but that I haven't made one of these in a long time. Real life gets in the way, and then Pokemon Alpha Sapphire happened, and then I got distracted. Anyway, so this game is starting to come together. It has music, it has backgrounds, it has killing things, and now we might as well enhance the graphics a little more. So, as these amazing looking brown blocks go, a lot of people would want to, if I can find the folder once again, would want to make it look like something, so perhaps, I don't know, maybe this? A nice little grass tile. So what a lot of people's first instinct would be to do would be to, if I can drag it in here, Game Maker stop like not working on me. Okay, so apparently drag and drop didn't want to work for me, so I just manually imported this the tile in through the long way. Anyway, so from there, what most people would do would be they would take the wall and they would give it the sprite of ground instead of the boring looking brown blob. And you run the game, and now in a lot of ways it looks even worse than it did before. You have these grass stone things just stacked on top of each other, and okay, so to remedy that, you can go find yourself another grass-ish sprite, or something like that, or a wall or something like that, and make a new wall object, and assign... Okay, so now it looks a little less hideous than it did before, but you still have the problem where every time you want to go and add a new little tiny graphic, be it a wall or a detail like, I don't know, a flower or something like that. Okay, apparently this flower doesn't have a transparent background like I wanted it to. But we can have a little object here that does absolutely nothing, have a sprite of flower, and we can go and stick that in the game. That looks horrible because it doesn't have a transparent background. I'm going to go fix that. Okay, so that looks a little less horrible than it did before. It still looks pretty bad, but nonetheless, point is, every time you want to add a new graphic, you would have to go and create a separate object, and I'm sure that most people can see where that's going to be a problem and how fast it is going to be a problem. For one, if you just keep duplicating objects and you want to make a slight change to the way walls behave, I don't know exactly what you'd want to make changes to a wall, but I don't know, maybe if you wanted them to disappear after a second and drop the player into a lake of lava or something, you would have to go and reprogram every single one of the wall objects to do that. Now you could, if you want to, use object inheritance to make that process... That was not what I meant to do. Use object inheritance to make the process go a little bit more smoothly, so you can change... Darn it, Game Maker, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. So that you can just write code for one object and have it behave for all types. But that still leaves the problem of you're going to have a ton of resources cluttering up your objects folder tree for one, and for two, they're all objects, so Game Maker is going to process things like collisions and step events and draw events for each one of them, which it really doesn't have to do. So that's just extra processing, and if you make a very, very large game, that could start to slow it down a little bit. So the solution to that is going to be, I'm going to get rid of these miscellaneous objects here momentarily. And the walls have been changed back to the boring brown square. And we're going to go and make a couple of them so that the player doesn't fall off the level and fall infinitely. And we're back to normal. We're back to where we were at the beginning of this video. So tiles. I just demonstrated one example of where they would come in useful. You have a lot of, say, background graphics that you need to fit together. And they aren't going to do anything except sitting there and look pretty, so you don't really need to give them their own objects. Tiles are going to enable you to do just that. So I'm going to go in here. Apparently, I already have a tiles file. I don't know exactly where that came from, but I want to go from the ground up here. We're going to go and add a background, and it's going to look like this. You can see you have the ground, the wood, the flowers, some grass, some clouds and stuff. I think these actually came from Game Maker's sample resources. I don't remember. Anyhow, what you're going to want to do is, instead of leaving this like this, the way the greater room background is, it's just a picture that's sitting there with no special properties, you're going to say use as tile set. And that's going to open up a couple other options. Tile width, tile height, offset, separation. So we're going to make the width and height 32 because these are 32 by 32 graphics. Offset and separation aren't too important. Depending on how your artist or you or whoever puts them together, you may leave, say, spaces between the tiles. a buffer so that, I don't know, the color doesn't like blend from one to another or something like that. And you could use separation to account for that. And say that's going to separate each of these tiles by 5 pixels horizontally, and I don't really want that. Offset is similar if you have say a row of empty pixels at the top or something like that, or on the side. You could set the offset to make up for that. Anyway, we're going to get out of there, and we're going to go into not backgrounds but tiles. And tiles are going to have you choose a background that has been denoted as a tile set. So this one showed up in this little drop-down menu, but this one did not because this one is not a tile set. And from here, you can go and click on one of the little 32 by 32, I guess, well, tiles, for lack of better things to call them, cells maybe. And from here, you can go and click, and you can click on the rim just like you would for an object, and you can place down a bunch of these tiles. And you can use as many different types as you want, all from one resource sheet. It's very simple for the game to process them because they're just pictures sitting there that aren't in need of any processing or anything. I'm going to delete these because they're a little off from where I want them to. So a couple more things. You may have noticed when I drag this behind one of these blocks, it disappears. And it doesn't disappear, I'm going to expand this. It doesn't disappear because it's not actually there, but it disappears because it's placed underneath the objects. By default, the depth of tiles is very, very high, and in GameMaker, the higher the number of something's draw depth, it will be drawn first, and then the lower numbers will be drawn on top of it, and say the negative numbers will be drawn on the surface above everything else. That's usually where you want to draw your HUDs and stuff. Tiles by default are about as close to the background as you can get without actually being one. And to change that, we're just going to hit change here, and instead of depth equals 100,000, a million, whatever that says, I can't count, we're going to make it say -1. And now it's appeared above, I didn't want that, it's appeared above the blocks, and we can go and choose some of these, and we can go and tile it like that. And we can go and do more of this. Yay. This would look better if I had better graphics, which I don't, so sorry. You can take some of this grass, you can just put that there. Maybe a flower or two. Red and I think white. It's going to look bizarre, but whatever. And let's run the game. Alright, so there it goes. And we have our graphics. It looks very bizarre. It looks about the same as it did when I used objects. In fact, it probably looks better because it was easier to like put down and everything. You have the flowers, the grass, the ground-ish things. I don't know, that it looks weird, but you have it there. You will notice the player is still being drawn on top of these grass clips here and in front of these flowers and things, and that would be because the player, I'm pretty sure I pointed this out before when I talked about this, the player's depth is -10, so if you wanted, say, if you wanted some flowers to be drawn in front of the player, like you're, I don't know, you're walking between them or something and you have depth in a 2D game, you can add another layer, you can make it, I don't know, -11 or something like that. Take a flower, stick it here, save your work, run the game, and the player will be appearing behind them. So that's nice. Tiles are fun, they're really useful. If you put more work into collecting your tile sets than I did, you could find, say, entire patterns for the things like walls and the corners and where they link together and awkward things like that. I believe GameMaker still includes a bunch of those sorts of things in the resources it gives you when you download it and install it, but I'm not sure about that. You can always use Google. You can search, say, ground tiles, wall tiles, grass tiles, Super Mario tiles, whatever you happen to want, and you'll undoubtedly find a plethora of them. Another resource that I do use sometimes for tiles and things like this would be actually Spriter. There it is, Spriter's resource. And they do have a lot of graphics in here, whether that be sprites for things like players or tile sets or backgrounds or whatever. They also do have, if you're really interested in this sort of thing, a couple other divisions, say models for 3D models, and textures for repeating textures like a grass or something like that. Sounds. I don't believe I've actually ever looked to see what they have in sounds, but if you're looking for tiles, this is a pretty good place to start. Alright, I don't think there's anything else here. I don't think there's anything else to really explain about tiles. If you have any questions, you can always leave a comment. If I missed something really obvious, yell at me, and if it's bad enough, I'll go and make a video correcting it, because I have had to do that before. Before I go on forever, rate, comment, and subscribe, watch some other stuff I have uploaded, and I will see you all later.